Yo, what's up guys? I am Sentiment and today I'm going to be ranking my top 5 anime. I've taken a bit of a break from content creation, so I figure this is a pretty stress-free way to transition back into doing videos and stuff because I really do enjoy it. I am among many people who like anime, so don't be upset if your favorite anime isn't on this list or isn't ranked as high as you would put it personally. Yeah, I rank these anime based on the amount of enjoyment I had watching them, and that's pretty much it. And a lot of these tend to be more action and adventure based, so keep that in mind. Slight spoilers for the shows that I will talk about, but I won't go too in depth or get too specific. So without further ado, let's go. Cool, now that we've got that out of the way, let's go over 2 quick honorable mentions before we get into the main ones. These are anime that I enjoy, but ones that don't necessarily crack the top 5, so I guess they'd be right below. But starting off with my gateway anime, we have Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. I just squished them both together. This, like I said, was my gateway anime, the first one that I watched start to finish. Really good. But since it was my gateway anime, I suffer from a bit of burnout from it, making it semi-difficult to talk about for extended periods of time. Naruto, pretty good. So yeah, moving on. The next honorable mention, in my opinion, is much more interesting to talk about, and some of you may have heard about it. It's called Gangsta. It's a 2015 anime about superhuman mercenaries working for mafia groups. It's cringe to say, but I found this watching an AMV, and it's very physically hard for me to say that. It's like the most 2010s way to find an anime, but I don't regret it. It's really cool. It has a nice power ranking system where the superhumans in it wear customized dog tags to identify how strong they are, and I thought the system was so cool. I actually bought one of the main characters' dog tags just because they're so cool to have. Finally, I'll say that the anime only has 12 episodes because from what I heard there were some issues with the studio, but there is a manga available somewhere online if you would like to finish out the story. I would say, despite being good overall, the characters can come off as a bit bland and underdeveloped, but aside from that, it's pretty enjoyable, and it got me to buy some merch. At number 5, we have Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Once again, a pretty standard selection, but a good one. Cool power system, really nice characters, and a plethora of times in the series where they tend to tug at heartstrings. If you've seen this one, you know what I mean. Personally, my favorite character was probably Scar, but once again, there are no shortage of cool characters within this anime. Fear Bradley was also insanely entertaining, especially later on in the show. All around, easy to follow and touches on all the aspects I like to see a solid, point A to point B anime is how I like to call them. Cohesive plot, cool power system, and good characters. Next up, we have a newer, more unorthodox anime, or at least I'm pretty sure it's classified as one. All of the online sources seem to treat it as an anime and call it such, and it follows the classic shonen trope of a young boy working his way through a harsh environment. Don't eat me alive if you don't consider this an anime, it's just what everyone seems to agree on. Anyway, we have Cyberpunk Edgerunners. I am a huge sci-fi fan, so this coming out was an absolute treat, but I didn't watch it when it initially dropped with all the hype because it really didn't interest me at the time. My hopes were pretty low due to the game's poor performance, the game that it was based on, Cyberpunk 2077. That game had a notoriously bad release, and this show, as a result, didn't really hype me up. But one October night, I sat back, popped it on, and I binged it that night, and those hours were the most emotionally charged moments of my life. Beautiful scenery, and locations, probably the best on this entire list. I might be biased because I'm a sci-fi person at heart, but I don't think that's too much of a hot take. A bunch of songs related to the anime came out shortly after, which added to my enjoyment of the franchise as a whole, and the series actually got me to buy the game, which it's based off, Cyberpunk 2077, which I didn't buy at the time because of the bad launch, how I mentioned earlier. So now, however, due to this anime, it's one of, if not my favorite games, so Edgerunner gets a bunch of additional points for that. If we want to talk about an anime that's a trippy vibe, we want to talk about Outlaw Star. This anime is so good. I don't want to call it a fever dream, but it's definitely an anime that takes you places, or at least it took me places. It's a retro sci-fi anime that follows Gene Starwind, a young mercenary on a backwater planet who dreams of captaining his own ship. Eventually, through a series of really weird events involving space wizards, he and his genius partner, Jim, eventually come to captain their own ship, fittingly called the Outlaw Star, and meet a variety of interesting characters along the way with the goal of finding a treasure hidden somewhere in the stars. I randomly watched this anime one night, and after the first episode, due to how different and kind of weird it was, I didn't really go back to it for a while, but for some reason the atmosphere and aura of the anime wouldn't leave the back of my mind. So a couple months after watching the first episode and dropping it, I went back and rewatched the first episode and ended up finishing the entire series, and I have zero regret. I had so much fun watching it. It's a great adventure, and if you're into sci-fi, found family, or anything of the sort, I suggest watching it. I'm actually looking at my Outlaw Star poster as I am writing this now, and my Chromebook wallpaper is actually an image of Gene Starwind overlooking a docking port. It's really scenic, and it's the only anime on this list that rivals the environment and setting of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, in my opinion. And in terms of straight vibe and heart, I have to say it's unmatched. Now, it's hard to top that one, but next up we have Attack on Titan. Now, relax, nobody freak out. I won't wank it off too much, but call it overrated if you want. I wouldn't really disagree, but the first few seasons of this anime were a really good mystery if I've ever seen one. The world building is exceptional early on, and it does an amazing job at almost everything. It has complexity, good characters, good action, a lot of mystery early on, tragic deaths, and later on in the series it subverts the typical anime template and makes a ton of characters and actions, including that of the main character, extremely and consistently morally gray. It did so much with the basic premise of a group of humans being trapped within these huge walls, and in terms of creativity, what it was able to do with what it started with is probably the top of the list in my opinion. This anime consistently gives me chills when I go back to watch scenes of it, and it probably has the highest and most consistent concentration of amazing moments on this list. Despite all that, with how the anime has been handled over the past few years, it's become pretty unbearable to continue watching it. You know, the separation of season 4 definitely has thrown me off. I just find it difficult to watch something I enjoy if I feel like it's repeatedly cut off in an unplanned manner. So I am a little bit behind on the anime at least, despite the fact that it's somewhat recently come back. But yeah, Rhino, on a side note, is probably my favorite character, but Attack on Titan is going to take the number 2 spot for now. People would probably call me a poser for this one, but I honestly don't care. Bleach is probably my number 1 anime at this time. I'm not gonna lie and act like I've been here since the beginning. I didn't know anything about it until it was announced that it was coming back. Up until that point, I had never watched it or anything. The only thing I knew about Bleach was that it was consistently memed and dogged on. But since I didn't watch it, I had no clue what the hate was about. Now listen to me. I have a sin to confess before I talk about this. There was like one time in middle school, so we're talking like 5-6 years ago, when I had only watched Naruto, when someone made a comment praising anime or the big 3, or saying something positive about anime. And I remember that my response was, except Bleach. I don't know what the conversation was about, and I explicitly remember not really understanding the words that were coming out of my mouth. I just knew that back then it was funny to rag on the anime. And that is the only time in my life where I've committed such an act. I was like 12 or 13. And oftentimes, man, 5 or 6 years later, I wake up in a cold sweat, screaming due to the guilt and the shame. I've carried this with me for around half a decade, so I ask forgiveness from the community. On a more serious note, I did kind of hop onto the hype train when it was announced that Bleach was coming back, because I had heard about it throughout the years, but had zero clue what it was. The only words I knew were Aizen, Soul Society, and Bankai. That was it. So when the OG trailer dropped back a year ago for the 1,000 Year Blood War arc, I thought, hey, you know, I've been hearing about it for so long. I've got no clue what it's about. And I started watching it, and I got hooked. And say whatever you want, I love this series. The complexity within the characters, the designs of the characters themselves, the various cultural nods, the music, the action, the power system, the antagonists are all amazing. Throughout my entire anime journey, I'd never run into an anime that made me actually want to start a YouTube channel to express my thoughts and feelings before I had seen Bleach. Most of, if not all, the anime on this list have had some tangible effect on me. I've brought posters, games, merch, set up wallpapers, and bonded with people due to these shows. But Bleach was the only anime that encouraged me to finally do something about it. Even if that effect is, small and insignificant in the long run, that means a lot to me. So yeah, as of this day, in the top 5, Bleach is definitely going to be my number 1. All right, guys, thanks for dropping in. I had fun making this script, honestly, and I hope that the few of you that see it enjoy it. It's been a while, I know. Been dealing with some stuff, but here I am with this video, and I have a few more in mind. So thanks for being patient, and enjoy. Suppose that is my cue.